Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Hailey. Happy weekend,
Dan.
one and all. You're listening to the Repcolite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore. And this week is the mold extravaganza on the show. It's mold episode, the mold episode.
Give me such anxiety.
Yeah, we're going to talk about mold, obviously, right?
Yes.
But it's not going to be all mold.
No, we are going to have Koala Insulation on the show as well.
And we're going to talk about insulation and
mold.
Mold. So, yeah, we're going to start talking about mold, take a break for Koala Insulation, have a little mold conversation in the middle there, and then we're going to end with a nice helping of mold before we wrap the show up. And, yeah, Hailey kind of tipped her hand there. It's giving her utter anxiety.
Yes.
You said, this is, I think what you said, maybe you were just being ridiculous and hyperbolic, but you said this was your greatest fear. Not piranhas, not crocodiles, but mold in your walls.
When do I really need to worry about crocodiles or piranhas? Mold, that's silent. It could be anywhere, anytime, killing me, and I don't even know.
Yeah, well, that's true. If piranhas are killing you, you're probably going to know. So, yeah, in that regard, it's maybe a better greatest fear. Maybe we should do a whole segment or a whole episode on greatest fears, but that's not going to be today. We're going to talk about mold and mildew. It's not a fun topic, but really it's important to talk about because mold and mildew can both cause a lot of problems if left unchecked. So let's get into it. How can we defend our homes? How do we deal with mold or mildew when we find it?
But honestly, are they the same is the first conversation because they're kind of used interchangeably, but they are different.
Well, they are. But like you said, they're used interchangeably, and that's not surprising.
Right.
There's a lot of similarities here. Both are types of fungi. They hang around, go out on the town, do all the big stuff, right?
Dad joke.
Fungi. Both of them are like that. Both develop because of excessive unchecked moisture in confined spaces, so crawl spaces, basements.
Yeah. Your attic.
Showers. Yeah, your attic, all kinds of things like that. Both do that. Both can be found on similar materials. Wood products, ceiling tiles, cardboard.
Wallpaper, carpets, drywall, insulation, all of the nice porous materials that fill our homes.
Yeah, both can eventually damage a home and both can cause health concerns.
Yeah.
So that's why Hailey's concerned. So you've got all of these things that make them very similar, yet there are some key differences, and really those differences determine how concerning the problem is and how easy it is to fix.
Right, because mold is by far the worst of the two.
Right.
I mean, mildew is friendlier mold.
Right. It's a funner of the fun guys.
Yes.
The most fun of the fun guys. Mildew usually grows on the surface of materials and it spreads outward. So really any damage that mildew causes,
it's pretty cosmetic.
Pretty much, yeah. And because it's just a surface growth, it's really pretty easy to clean. You just need a store-bought cleaner, soft scrub brush, and a rag, and you can take care of mildew relatively straightforward, relatively easily.
On the other hand, it digs in, right?
Well, right. In nature,
it rots things.
Right. In nature, its primary purpose is decomposition. So it spreads quickly, it burrows, it causes structural damage, not just cosmetic damage. And then depending on the size of the infestation, which that's what they call it, an infestation. And I can't think of very many things that are
call
positive.
Infestation that are good.
An infestation of love in his heart. No, that's not how it's said. So when you hear the word infestation, you right away know something is up. Something negative.
And that you may need professional help
to remove it.
Right.
Right. You may need professional help, but you also may need professional help to remove it. And they might not be the same people. Just depends on how bad the infestation is. Anyway, how do you tell what you're dealing with? How do you tell what's mold and what's mildew? And it's kind of pretty easy. Mildew is pretty much basically white or gray in its early stages, and it can get dark or kind of brown as it gets older. It's dry.
Right, kind of like powdery, and it always appears as flat, small dots growing outward on the surface. And it smells, a little bit musty.
Yeah, if you like to determine things by smell, it's mildly musty. I read somewhere that people compare mildew to slightly damp socks.
Okay.
And I couldn't really find the value in that because that seems like that could be pretty pungent.
Depending on the foot, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I left that out, but now I've brought it back in. Anyway, mold is usually colorful.
Right, it's
green.
Like green,
oh, yeah.
red,
the paint
blue.
People, we love mold because of all the colors and the excitement of it.
And then there's black. We all know
Oh, yeah. Black mold. It often looks fuzzy, so it's got texture. I mean, really, it's a design element. Color, texture.
It can be slimy.
Slimy, so touch and feel. Well, I guess that's texture. It usually appears in an irregular spotted pattern.
Right.
And pungent. It's musty, way stronger than mildew when it comes to the smell.
So really, really bad socks.
Oh, yeah, really bad. The worst socks. The worst.
The worst.
Gym socks from that one kid. We all know. Anyway, how do you treat mold and mildew if you find it? Well, the first thing, you need to figure out what you're dealing with. Is it mold or is it mildew?
Right. Is it mildew, which is a surface problem, or is it mold that can burrow in and cause that structural damage? And that's, generally a bigger deal.
Yeah. So determine what you're dealing with, then identify the source of the problem and take steps to repair it. Mold and mildew can start to grow on a damp surface. This part was kind of eye-opening to me. Mm-hmm. And I think if anything scared me in all of this, this is what scared me. Mold and mildew can start to develop on a damp surface as quickly as 24 to 48 hours after the surface has been dampened. So there's no point dealing with the consequences of a problem, dealing with your mold and mildew if you haven't addressed that initial problem. Because if there's a leak or something like that, within just hours, it can already start to be regrowing. So definitely figure out what you're dealing with, then identify the source of the problem and take steps to fix that. And now you need to figure out if this is a DIY or a do-it-for-me kind of a thing.
Right. Mildew, like we said, is more of a surface problem, so it's pretty easy to clean up. Basically, just mist the surface with a vinegar solution or a mildew-killing cleaner. There are specific ones. And then wipe it clean with a sponge. Frequently change the water as you go, because if you don't, you're technically redepositing all those mildew spores back into the same area. So that's a big problem.
Yeah, don't do all of that and then wring your rag out and just store it in your bucket, and then a couple of months later get it down and wipe everything down again, because you'll spread it everywhere. Be careful about that. If it's mold, it definitely can be a much bigger problem. And the general rule of thumb here is if the infestation is bigger than 10 square feet, or if you're highly sensitive to mold, you're going to want to get a professional. Now, if you're going to do the work, you want to make sure that you're going to wear the right protective gear.
Yes.
An N95 mask, rubber gloves,
eye protection, wear goggles.
Right, old clothes in case you're dealing with bleach. Basically get all suited up.
Yeah, I mean, they make those hazmat suits, right?
Right, go whole hog into this. And then when it's time to actually start the work, you're going to start by removing all the porous materials that have extensive mold growth on them. So drywall, carpet, wallpaper, ceiling tiles.
Yeah, if it can't be thoroughly cleaned and dried out, just get rid of it.
Right, and when you're hauling this out of your home, haul it out of the closest door to get it outside.
Or make a tour and then just spread all the spores.
Right, 'cause if you go through the whole house, you're just spreading more spores, and that can cause a problem. So it is serious. Just take the shortest route to get out of the house with the stuff. Be careful and get it out. Then once you got that done, you're going to hit the hard surfaces. Clean them with soap and water, maybe a white vinegar solution. If it's really bad, spray it on and let it sit for an hour and just kill the mold, and then come back and wipe it clean.
And if you're working in areas where it's not practical to eliminate all of the moisture, you can use something a little heavier duty, get some bleach and some water, and that'll keep it under control.
Yeah, 1 cup of bleach and 5 gallons of water. That will definitely help. Make sure you're ventilating and wearing that protective gear. Then you've got to let the area dry thoroughly. It should be dry for about 48 hours before you put it back into service.
And then, keep an eye on things.
Yeah, you got to continue to inspect those areas for moisture and the signs of new mold growth. You may need to make further repairs or remove more material before you're actually done. So, Hailey, what do you think? Are you still utterly freaked out, or did all of that really help? I can't imagine that any of that helped you.
Well, I feel better in that I probably would notice a smell.
All right. All right. Yeah. Well, there you go. You've got something positive to take with you to overcome some of these fears. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be in the studio with Koala Insulation. That's all next. Stick around. And we're back, and Hailey and I are joined in the studio by Chaz Varady, the sales and marketing manager from Koala Insulation of Grand Rapids. Chaz, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Now, we're excited to talk about insulation. We haven't covered a lot of this. We haven't hit this topic really in the past, and this is really kind of fun for us. We've got stores now on the east side of the state.
Right, in Detroit.
Yeah, and so as we interview people, we're always trying to find out, how do we get, people that
Both
will cover.
sides covered.
Right, because the show airs out there as well. And Chaz, I know Koala Insulation of Grand Rapids services the Grand Rapids area, but Koala Insulation is all over the state, right?
Yeah, it's all over the state. It's actually a franchise, originated down in Melbourne, Florida, and it's just grown all over the United States.
So it's everywhere. So everywhere the Repcolite Home Improvement Show goes, there's a Koala Insulation somewhere that you can go talk to.
Or close by.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we want to talk about insulation. We've got a lot of our own questions, but I think right off the bat, let's just start simple. And I guess it's actually going to be science-y because you guys got on your website a learning center and you've got a number of different articles. And I started with one where, what is insulation? How does insulation work?
Right.
And then, it starts and I'm tracking, and then all of a sudden we're talking second law of thermodynamics. And I'm thinking, okay, we're just going to wait till Chaz gets here and we'll see him. How does insulation work? Walk us through that. I know it's basic, but let's just start at the beginning.
So just the basic. Basic insulation is just about controlling heat. I mean, it's about keeping the heat in the winter and the heat out in the summer. It's about air sealing a house or a apartment building, or it could be a new build, construction site. And it's also can be used for sound, too. But majority of the time, we're trying to take care of people's needs about controlling their environment. As simple as I said, keep the heat in the winter and the heat out in the summer.
So we've got R values. That's a term that gets used all the time. I know when I was looking at doing some things in the house, there's certain rates I've got to be at or ranges that I've got to hit.
When I was doing the garage, I was insulating and I've got, just that pink board, the foam.
Board.
And I realized afterwards that I had really overkilled the wall insulation and I totally underdid it on the ceiling using that. So I know that there's very specific R values for where you're using the insulation as well. Can you talk a little about
Well, what is R? What is R value in the first place? And how is that determined?
Yep.
And then we'll go from there.
So our value is just the resistance value. It's the rate that heat passes through and transfers through it.
Okay.
And like I was saying about controlling heat, keeping it in, keeping it out. So, they put out regulations of how much the code. Code has grown over the years, for walls and for attic insulation. For a long time in walls, 2x4s are 13. Well, that's the rate of heat transfer through the walls.
Okay.
Where in an attic, it used to be R38. Well, it's changed now. Code has improved, and as much as energy, walls are, for new builds are R20.
Okay.
And in attics are R49.
Wow.
It's about, again, just controlling the rate. So it's the resistance value that the heat transfers through it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so with that kind of as our foundation, those are some of the basic terms that are going to get used. Let's talk about the different insulation options out there. I mean, there's all kinds of different things. There's blown-in fiberglass, blown-in cellulose, open cell spray foam, bats, all kinds of different things. Walk us through some of the pros and the cons. Just help us understand the products a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, each one has its unique identity and what it's used for. I mean, blown in, like you said, is blown in fiberglass, blown in cellulose. That can be used up in the attics. It depends on, sometimes it's the customer needs, or sometimes it's the specs that are called out, or the builders, we try to follow those needs. And then, fiberglass bats can be put in the walls. You can also do what's called a wall spray. It's a wet spray blown in cellulose. That can be done in walls as well.
Okay.
It's a pretty cool, unique thing that we just started here in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
And we do spray foam. We in Grand Rapids, we do closed cell spray foam. Koala Insulation as a whole all over the United States, you can do open and close, but we find that the area that we're in of the United States is called Zone 5. That's the code I have to follow with the insulation world. I have a better chance of reaching the R value with closed cell than I do open cell.
What's the difference between those? Like, do they look different, or are we just talking about R values?
It's both.
Okay.
So closed cell is, spray foam, closed cell is two chemicals that come together. It's an iso and a resin. They come together, and once they form, it becomes the spray foam. That's why we do it on open walls or open areas of the territory or the area that we're trying to insulate. I always think the R value on closed cell, it ranges anywhere from like per inch, like R7, 7.1, 7.4, but we just say R7. Open cell you can do, but you need twice as much. Every inch of open cell is half the R value of closed cell.
Okay.
So
why would you do open cell if that's the case? What would that What would you ever gain from that?
Open cell is really, really good for sound, but we also find where we are in the United States, we're going to spray closed cell more in this area, where down south, it's a lot warmer, humid.
Sure.
They use open cell more than they do closed cell for controlling heat.
Right.
Because of humidity. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right. So it's a lot of it's just based on, in fact,
you're
most of it seems to be based on where you're at.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right.
Pretty much.
So now you mentioned something, and I'm going to sound completely stupid here, but the audience is used to that. You mentioned something that you sprayed before you got to the spray foam stuff. You were talking about something that you started doing, Koala's starting to do.
Yeah.
What is that? I wanted to dig into that.
It's called wall spray or wet spray. It's the way cellulose is sprayed into a wall. So let's say you have an open wall, 2x4, 2x6, whatever it might be. Before we come in after the mechanicals. Let's say for a new build.
Okay.
After the electrical and plumbing is done, then we come in. The wall spray. It's just mixed with a little bit of water. It's real simple. The way the machine will add just a little bit of water, so when we spray it, it fills the cavity, whether it's 2x4 or 2x6.
Got it.
We scrape it down, and then it's stuck. I always compare it like this: fresh coat of snow.
Okay.
How do you make a snowman, right? Or how do you make a snowball? You take it, you compact it together, and now you have a snowman or a snowball. It's the same thing. You pack it in the walls, and it'll stay there. So,
all right.
Yeah,
So is that something that you can do on a current residence? Like you're talking new builds right there, but is this something that you can apply to a home that's been standing?
Not this method.
Okay.
We can still put the same product, cellulose or even blown-in fiberglass, into an existing wall.
Okay.
It's called drill and fill. Okay, so I'll go into a lot of homes. Around here, when homes were right around 1970, is when codes started to come into play, give or take about a year or so. Before then, code wasn't in play that you had to put insulation in homes. Energy was cheaper. It was just the way to do things. So a lot of times you got to look at a home, whether they may have some or they may not, because you don't know what's happened over time. But let's say they don't. We do a drill and fill. If it's vinyl siding, we lift up the vinyl. Every chamber, every cavity, 16 on center, we're drilling a hole, 2 1/4, 2.5 inch, and filling it the best we can. We'll put cellulose, we'll put fiberglass in it.
So I've got a 1920 Craftsman. I think I've maybe got this because I've got these they're like little covers, little round covers that are kind of spaced across the outside of the house.
Yeah, they look like little plugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the drill and fill.
So it isn't.
Some companies have done it with smaller holes. We do it little bigger holes because it allows us to get in there and make sure that we get the cavities full. So vinyl we lift up, aluminum siding we can, or we just do it right through it, and there's paintable plugs. We can go through people's drywalls too.
So you can do it from the inside.
Yeah.
If you would like plugs on the inside of your home, because some of us really like the look of those plugs, right?
Well, this will feed right into you guys. When we do it in the drywall, inside the drywall, our crew will put in a plug. We do the first coat of mud. That's as far as we go. Somebody then has to.
You got to go get the paint.
You see where I'm going with this?
Well,
somebody's going to have to sand it, make it look pretty, and obviously they got to repaint
right.
it.
Yeah, I think you should recommend only doing it from the inside.
Yes.
We'll team up.
I like your
Double
thinking.
team, yeah, everybody out there.
Yeah.
All right. We're in the studio with Chaz Varady from Koala Insulation of Grand Rapids. We're going to take a break, Chaz. There's a number of other questions that we've got. Can you wait with us over a break?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then we'll get to these questions on the other side. We'll be back in just a minute with Chaz from Koala Insulation. Stick around. And we're back, and Hailey and I are still in the studio with Chaz Varady from Koala Insulation of Grand Rapids. You're the sales and marketing manager.
That's correct.
So you do all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We just do the marketing.
Yeah.
So we're not quite as...
We're not quite as cool.
No, not quite as cool. Anyway, Chaz, we were talking about insulation, all the different things that we could do. Hailey was talking about, her situation. She's got an older home. What can we do to get it insulated? We talked about blowing it into the walls, cutting holes, or put little holes, drilling little holes.
Plugging them,
all of that stuff. If you've got little plugs around the outside of your house and you didn't know, that's probably from having insulation blown in at one point or another. Chaz, let's talk about, a specific, I guess I don't want to go specific. I want to talk about what is the most common. We covered it in the last segment. There's tons of different types of insulation, spray foams and bats and blown-in cellulose. What is most commonly used, and how do you determine that? I'm assuming there isn't a most common, kind of situational.
It is situational. I take the approach. I listen to what the customer's needs are. Right. I'm not trying to come off as a salesperson. I mean, that is my title. I'm trying to approach them as an insulation expert. I'm trying to see what I can do to satisfy their needs and whatever it might be. These older homes, they're unique. People have different ideas of what they want to do when it comes to remodeling, or, these side attics that we run into. How can I improve the efficiency of their home?
Sure.
And I have ideas. It's just a matter of where they want to take it. I mean, we can do tons of blown-in cellulose. I can put fiberglass in their walls. I can put it in their knee walls in some of these side attics. I can just do a simple blown-in up in their attics, whether it's cellulose or fiberglass. It doesn't matter. Some have the needs of these older homes were not built to handle the amount of R-value needed to get into an attic. To make it feel comfortable for them.
Okay.
If you think about some of these older homes that are upstairs and they're right next to the roof deck.
Yes.
You can't get enough R value up there. Well, then you have a question of spray foaming. If it's exposed walls, I'll spray foam it, and which I can then give them a nice tight air seal. Because then they don't need venting and things like that. So those are things that can help.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of doing the best I can to meet their needs. And it might be their budget as well, too, and what they're trying to accomplish, whether short-term or long-term.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So I know there are some obvious telltale signs. I'm cold. My house probably needs insulation. Are there other things that tip people off, other concerns, things they should be looking at that would tell them if they might have an issue?
Obviously right here in Michigan, I mean, the winters have been bad, but hasn't been that bad. Just a couple weeks ago, we had the big storms. Well, as soon as that happened, the telltale is ice dams. Is the snow melting? Are you getting long icicles on your house? They look pretty. Kids love them. Yeah. But to a homeowner, that's not good. Long term, that could be, yeah.
So, Hailey, you were all excited because you had insulation, but apparently your insulation blows. So,
at least in the attic, maybe it sounds like it needs to be replaced. I've definitely got some extreme icicles that happen on my house.
Now, I think we all get some icicles, right? Or are there just dream mansions where there's not even a single icicle? It's so perfectly insulated.
There's a lot of houses, but
is your home one of them? Is it like
yes?
Oh,
yes, it is.
So you're cooler than us in yet another manner too.
So again, it's not always necessary about insulation too. I want to increase your R value, but I also have to look that you have proper ventilation. Ventilation is very critical in this as well. Because like when I was telling about the R value, that's the rate that the heat transfers through that. Even if you have an R49, right, you still get a little bit of heat transfer through that. It doesn't entirely slow it down other than spray foam, but so you still have to get the ventilation. So you got to have your soffits and your eaves. You have to have plenty of those. A lot of new houses, the roofs have its code. They have to put ridge vents in. Yeah. So that's how you ventilate a house. That's when it comes into play in the winter, so that the heat's not necessarily melting the snow, but it comes very important in ventilation in the summer as well. Because you have to vent your attic. You keep your house cool. It's very hot outside, cooler nights. The temperature fluctuates in your attic. That leads to moisture. That leads to mold. That becomes a different problem. So,
how often do you see mold?
I see it quite a bit.
Really?
I'm all day long going in and out of attics or looking at homes. I can see when it's there.
That's scary.
So. Do you see lots of really bad? We just had a segment that we talked about mold. And right after this segment, we're going to talk about more mold. So when you run into it, do you run into it like, oh, it's just a little bit, no big deal? And sometimes do you go like, okay, we're going to have to burn this whole house down?
No, you don't have to burn it. You can treat it.
You don't have to burn it.
Sorry.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, there you go.
Now, I may play the idiot, Chaz, but I'm not a complete idiot.
Right.
But how bad do you see it? Do you sometimes see some pretty serious infestations?
Sometimes I see some pretty bad ones.
Wow.
Sometimes I see just a little bit. And, the homeowner could treat it themselves. There's things that you can do. But when I see it really, really bad, I do have a relationship with a guy that has a molding company. So he gives me referrals. I give him referrals because I'll go in and I'll see it first. And I'll let the homeowners know.
Yeah.
I take plenty of pictures and let them see what's in their attic.
Because you want to get that taken care of if you're going to go into that space.
Well,
right?
when I share those photos with them, they don't know because how many times does a homeowner go up in their attic?
Yeah. I'm afraid
not
to.
Not very often.
No, that's not something you do on a regular basis.
Normally, I'm not finding anything good. How about, speaking of infestations, this has no bearing on anything. I'm just curious. How about like critters and stuff? You run into lots of that?
Yeah. You can
Families of raccoons and stuff?
Well, I don't go up in there when there's raccoons.
Oh, yeah.
No.
You got some boundaries.
I have some boundaries. They are not nice, but it doesn't bother me. Yeah, you can see mice activity, and you can see bats sometimes, but there's things you can do. And to be honest, for my side of it, when I see it like that, or even they'll call me because of that, we can do complete removals. We do a lot of removals.
Removal of?
The current insulation that's on there, whether it's because of the animals or it's old, because, after a while, it breaks down for a while and it doesn't hold the R value.
How long?
It's not lifetime.
Yeah, that we wondered about that.
I mean, it depends. I mean, 25, 30 years, you may want to think about it.
Boy, you ought to time that with a brand new roof. That way, when everything goes, it all goes. Think about how expensive that could be.
Joys of a homeowner.
Yeah, isn't it great?
That's so fun.
But I don't know if this is the time or place.
Always the time and place.
So there's a lot of things that I let customers know about. I mean, when they start doing this stuff, the energy companies, they're offering rebates. I let the customer know.
Sure.
Anytime you do anything like this, go get your rebates. And I'll help them afterwards. I can't get it for them, but I'll give them the information they need to go get it. The energy companies, I partner with them all. I talk to them all. It's the most unclaimed thing out there.
Really?
So go get your rebates. And then I also inform them about the IRA Inflation Reduction Act that came out January of last year for 10 years. There's a lot of things under that program, but it also, to a homeowner, for insulation or improving the efficiency, is larger tax credits.
Okay.
So,
So there's some ways to save some money.
Yeah. I mean, you improve the insulation in your walls, your attic, air sealing, windows, whatever it might be.
Right.
You can put an Energy Star refrigerator appliance. That's tax credit. So now you can get rebates and you get tax credits.
And you'll walk people through that and help them
I stay on top
make those
of
connections.
That. Oh, yeah.
All right. So one quick question going backwards a bit. You talked about looking at the attics and getting everything figured out, and it's not always just about the insulation. It's about the ventilation as well. Is that something you can help them with, or do you get somebody else to come and take care of that?
No, that's part of the deal that we do. Kevin and I, we made it part of our practice when we go into an attic, regardless. We put baffles in. Baffles are what goes over your eaves where your soffits are.
Okay. Keeps
them clear, so the insulation's not piling in on it. And if they don't have enough ventilation, they can get it different ways. They can get their siding company to do it, or we can do it as well.
Okay.
We can add additional soffits to a home.
All right.
And we do.
And you talked about removing the stuff that was, like if it's gone, it's 25 years, it's just really not doing what it needs to do. It's got to get out, or animals have done whatever to it.
Old.
What about mold and stuff? Do you touch that, or is that where you get the remediation?
Then I'm gonna recommend the guy that I know as a referral.
All right. I think that covers almost all the questions we had. There's a million more that we could ask, but time is not eternal yet. At some point it will be. But right now, we still got to function under that. So we're running out of time. Chaz, if our listeners do want to get in touch with you, maybe they've got more questions, they want to get you out to the house, take a look at things, give them an estimate.
Yep.
How do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can visit our website, koalainsulation.com, the Grand Rapids location. They can call our main number, 616-333-6667, and that goes to my cell phone and Kevin's cell phone. But I answer it 99% of the time.
All right. So if they've got questions, give you a call.
Yep.
You'll come out. What does the process look like very quickly? Like if you're going to scope out the area, how long does it take? Is there a charge for that?
Nope. Free estimates.
Okay.
Yep. They give me a call. We'll find a day and time that works best for both of us. I'll notify them on my way. I'll come out and take a look at it, see what their needs are. I mean, depending on the complexity of the issue, I mean, 15 minutes to an hour. It depends.
All right.
Sure.
Depends on what it is.
Sounds good.
I usually just allocate an hour, but just to be safe. But yeah.
All right. If you have any questions at all, we encourage you to reach out to Koala Insulation, and we'll put links in the show notes so everybody can find that. Chaz, thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Yep.
All right.
guys.
We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to be talking about 10 different things you can do to hopefully prevent mold and mildew from showing up in your home. That's all just ahead. Stick around. Well, Hailey, that last segment has to have put you at ease.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
little mold fears.
Yeah. Hearing that it's very common for mold to be in attic spaces when insulation is being looked at.
Right. Yeah. Now, we started the show talking about mold and mildew. Hailey confirmed or confessed that this was a major fear of hers. We went through that first segment and allayed some of those fears.
Yeah, because I feel like, okay, if I've got something, most likely I can smell it.
Yep. And then we found out, it can be lurking in our attics, and we might not even know. And that it's very common.
Right, yeah. Not just that it could be there, but that it's common for it to
So, mold and mildew. You're listening to the Repcolite Home Improvement Show, and we would not be the Repcolite Home Improvement Show, improvement, if we didn't have steps to avoid some of these things. You know, if all we did was point out problems, I don't really know what that would be. Yeah, that would not be what you'd want to listen to. We've got answers. We went through answers, what you could do to clean up a mold problem or a mildew problem if you've got that. Now let's talk about some ways, 10 things that you can do to make sure, or at least do your very best, to prevent mold and mildew.
Right. Let's avoid it altogether.
Yeah, you don't want it to take a foothold in your home. So what are things you can do? One thing you can do, use a dehumidifier.
Yeah, you want to try to keep your home's humidity at an ideal level, and that's usually between 40 and 50%.
Right. Now, one thing that I did for an entirely different reason, I was actually adding humidity to my home. I have a humidifier.
Yeah, I've got
what that is. Yeah. I didn't even need to explain that. Someday I won't do that, but then it won't be this show anymore. Anyway, I bought a humidifier.
Which adds humidity.
Sure does. That's why I got it. And anyway, the thing that I bought that was so smart, I was so pleased with, was this smart hygrometer.
Yeah.
It checks the humidity level in the air, and it's a smart one, so it reports on my iPhone.
Right.
And it's great. I can check what's going on in my guitar room, which is what I needed to humidify. And I can do that without even having to get off the couch. Well, I'm going to get some of these for various areas in the home. They're inexpensive.
That's smart.
I mean, some of them were $10. I mean, super inexpensive.
Yeah, put it in the crawl space, put it in the basement.
Heck yeah. And then I can, from my phone, check what it is. I won't have to send the children in with a headlamp.
Or I'm sure you could get alerts probably if it's at an ideal level.
Yes, all of that. I think that's a really good idea for areas that are very susceptible to mold and mildew.
Right.
You could keep an eye on the humidity level. So think about a hygrometer and try to keep the whole home around 40 to 50% humidity. All right, another one, ventilate well.
Right. Like we talked about, bathroom and laundry rooms are especially prone to mold and mildew. So make sure you have the right size ventilation fan. That's very important. There's different sizes of these things. You want to make sure it's fit for your space and then use them for long enough.
Right. A lot of people turn them off. I turn it off too soon because it's noisy. It's annoying. So you turn it off right away. You're actually supposed to leave them running for about 20 minutes after a shower to really evacuate the moisture out of the air. So make sure you're running it long enough.
Exactly.
A third thing that you can do is to practice really good storage techniques. So keep your stored items several inches off concrete floors and away from foundation walls where moisture can seep in.
Yeah, it's especially important if you're storing things like cardboard boxes or papers or anything wood, all those porous materials that could, eventually get mold
yeah, they're
or
just
mildew.
sitting there with calling cards out saying, mold, mildew, look what I've got for you. Get those things up off the floor, and also try to use plastic or metal shelves in potentially damp areas.
Right, yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, because you could build all these wonderful wood shelves, but one of the things we said in our list was wood.
Wood.
Yeah. So my shelves are full of mold. And that just translated to everything. So metal or plastic in those damp areas. A fourth thing, avoid basement carpets if possible.
Right.
I know this isn't completely possible in all situations, and maybe it's not even desirable in all situations, but it's something to think about. Carpets can be a haven for mold, especially in below-grade spaces where humidity tends to be a little higher.
Hard surfaces like any of those luxury vinyls or, laminates are going to be way better.
Right, and think about it. It's luxury. Vinyl plank, right? Luxury. Who doesn't want that in their home? Carpet? It's not called luxury carpet. If you really want to have the upper end of everything, you want the luxury vinyl planking. But yeah, it's not going to have the mold and mildew concerns.
Yes.
I don't know if that's something that everybody's going to do. I'm not going to be pulling the carpet out of the basement room that I've got where the carpet is because I've never had moisture there.
Right.
But if I have to replace it somewhere.
It's something to look at, though.
Right. If I'm replacing it down the road, I'll consider. A lot will be determined by what it looks like when I pull it up.
Right.
If it looks like a science experiment gone horribly awry, then maybe it's time for vinyl planking. For sure, don't put carpet in crawl spaces. And I don't know if anybody else has that, but it's all over the place in my crawl space.
Yeah, and you didn't put it there, to be fair. It was there when you moved in.
No, but I sure would have.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I don't even think about this stuff, but now I do. I'm getting it out. Get it out of your crawl space. Another thing, don't forget your laundry room. Don't leave wet clothes in your washing machine.
Totally.
Hanson children.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're the only ones who have ever done this or have such an epidemic problem of this happening in the home. But yeah, we'll wash stuff, leave it there. 4 days later, what is that? Horrendous stink. Oh, that's all our clean clothes.
That's gross.
Then they throw them through the dryer. Now everything stinks. Don't leave it in the water. Remember, we talked 24 to 48 hours before mold and mildew is starting to set in. Don't leave that stuff in the washer. Open up the washer.
Right, yeah, leave the door of the washer open, especially if you've got one of those front loaders. But top loaders too, just leave it open.
Yeah. So sixth thing you can do, keep the air moving in your home. Stagnant air traps humidity, so open windows, use fans, or run your HVAC system. Just keep the air moving.
Yeah.
Use an indoor air purifier. This is number 7.
I love a good air purifier. I want to talk about the one I just got. It's brilliant.
Are you going to talk about it now, or are you going to wait on that?
I'm going to wait.
Okay. I
Teaser.
thought you were setting us up for something, and I was freaked out because that was not allotted for in our notes and our planning. So we'll talk about that in the future. But an air purifier, that can do great things. Hailey loves it. Hailey approved.
Yep.
More info coming soon. 8, change your HVAC and air purifier filters regularly.
Yes.
They're designed to
catch
pull
the mold spores. So if you're just letting it sit there and not changing those things, then you're growing mold.
Yeah, you're doing a bad thing here. Number 9, fix water problems fast. We've talked about this. I've said it 2 or 3 different times, but I'm going to say it one more time because for me, this was the big takeaway in all of this. Mold and mildew can begin to grow in just 24 to 48 hours after a surface has been dampened. So if you notice a leak or you experience flooding, don't delay. This isn't a project for the weekend.
Yeah.
It's something you want to get on right now because it could develop into a problem very quickly and get out of hand.
Right. And if it's not something that you personally can deal with by yourself, if you're waiting for a professional to come in, at least get a dehumidifier in that space to start removing some of that moisture.
Yeah, get a dehumidifier going, get fans running,
right.
Do everything you can to start getting the area dried out.
Yeah.
Don't wait. Don't wait. All right, number 10, and this one is really fun. I like this one because there's probably people who are sitting there thinking, wow, I'm doing all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything to do. Wrong. It's always fun to have something to give to everybody. Number 10 applies to every single one of us. Inspect for mold and mildew regularly. You know the areas that are susceptible to mold and mildew. We've talked about them.
Yeah.
The crawl spaces, bathrooms, things like that. Inspect these areas on a regular basis. And if we have heavy rains or something like that, take a peek at your home's weak points. Even if you don't usually get water in those spaces.
Because you found, I think you've talked about it multiple times, your crawl space, there was a heavy rain, and for some reason you checked it.
I don't know why I checked it. I checked it, and water had come in, soaked the carpet. Fortunately, I found it. It was not fun to clean up, a lot of work. But if I hadn't found it at that point, if I'd have just found it a couple of days later, who knows what could have been starting.
Exactly.
I think it still would have been all right. I could have controlled it, but I might not have checked it for a month.
Exactly.
So keep an eye on these spaces, especially when we have some unusual rains or something like that. It's the best thing you can do. All right, Hailey, that's all the time we've got. We're going to wrap it up. If you want to catch this one again, you can find it online at repcolite.com. Whatever you do today, make sure paint's a part of it. I'm Dan Hansen.
I'm Hailey Johnson. Thanks for listening.